hope you all had fun last night and had a chance to listen to Neil Leifer, who, as good as any sports photographer in the history of the business. And Mike, I thought he said something that was so appropriate. I'm really glad he did. He talked about the keys to success being preparation, as you might guess, and luck, which you might not guess, and which a lot of people who are successful might not want to admit. But when you put those two together, you have a powerful combination.
Yeah, I mean, oh, goodness, this microphone works. Yeah, people sometimes say, how did you get started? And maybe that question comes up. But being lucky, it has been huge. Having a good mentor to give you opportunities where you may not necessarily have known an opportunity was. Living in New Hampshire, how many people have ever been to New Hampshire in this room? More than I thought. But there's an old saying, there was a basketball coach in Vermont named Tom Brennan, and Vermont had a good run. They beat my alma mater, Syracuse, one year in the NCAA tournament. And he said, there's only 50 states, and I own one of them. So being in New Hampshire with so few people has benefited me, because if I went to a bigger pond like Michigan, I probably wouldn't have had the opportunities that I've had. I'm not really sure why Dave chose me for this, but I guess versatility means I've had to change careers a lot, dance a lot to stay relevant to the business. But to Jack's point, being lucky and being prepared when the opportunity comes is a big reason why I've had the chances I've had.
We speak about New Hampshire. I'm glad to see that we have the group in the back there.
Austin P.
Fly Williams, right? Yeah. That was the famous headline or the chant, right? Let's go. Yeah. I think it is very important that you are here for the reason it shows that you have an open mind, because you're going to need one. How many of you know exactly what you want to do and what you're going to be doing in 10 years? Good. Because if you raised your hand, I was just going to tell you that's your first mistake of the day. Because you have no idea what you're going to do. The best laid plans, and the vast majority of people who are successful in this business, I'd say 90-95%, have a detour. Sometimes many detours. Okay? Sometimes it looks like roads in San Francisco. But the key is to be able to navigate that and to build from one step to the other, not get discouraged. I know some people who early on in their careers have had a setback, and they've said, you know what, I'm getting out of this. I'm going to go sell insurance. Nothing against insurance salesmen, but almost invariably, they come back later and say, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why couldn't I stick it out? Even if I didn't get the job I wanted, the assignment I wanted, I was doing something I couldn't quite understand, believe me, it all fits together. Mike, how did you start?
So I graduated from college in 1995, so a century ago. Went to Syracuse University, and they tell you there, everybody in the room is going to be successful, and most of the people in that room were. I'm the exception. So I was getting married to my first wife right after I graduated. So picture this, May of 1995. I graduate college, getting married 2 weeks later. In between there, I interviewed for a job in Concord, New Hampshire, which I'd never been to New Hampshire in my life before. My wife's from the Chicago area. And the day before our wedding, I get a phone call. I want to offer you a job on this 1,000-watt AM radio station for $13,000 a year. I had to say, excuse me. Back then we didn't have cell phones. I had to say, excuse me, ask my wife-to-be the next day before our wedding, can we move to New Hampshire for $13,000 a year? Somehow she said yes that day. She said yes the next, and she's still married to me, but I always call her first wife, as Mike knows, because it'll always be true for when she eventually leaves me. But we moved to New Hampshire basically sight unseen, and I said I'll be here for like a year or two, and funny how things work out. I'm still there, but not the same job. I'm making double what I made then, so don't worry about it. But the opportunities kind of came from there, and I say my first wife and her kids are from New Hampshire, but it started on a small radio station, and radio was a big deal back then. I was never more popular than a snowy morning, because then, back in the old days, you had to listen to the radio to find out if you had school. right? And if I missed your school, like you put the radio on late, you had to wait 10 more minutes to go through the whole alphabetical list. But I was the king of the world for school closings and then the swap shop. No one knows the swap shop, right? I was the sultan of swap because every day you could call up for 20 minutes and try to sell something. You know, now you have eBay and Craigslist or whatever, but it was like, I have a 13-inch TV. You'd call up the radio station, I'd put you on the air. But if you called back-to-back days, I have to shut you off. It was only every other day. So those were the halcyon days of my life, Jack, is being able to do school closings, read about sports, and the hardest part of my job was simply getting up in the morning. How about you?
I would say the day before your wedding, you asked her if you could move to New Hampshire for 13 grand. You married well.
I held on for dear life, sir.
Oh, right. I had a little different path than anyone I know. I was going to be a broadcaster, then decided I was going to be a Big Ten football coach. Wound up teaching English in high school and coaching football and track. And my wife was also trying to get a teaching job. So one Saturday morning, she went over to what's called the Student Services Building in Lansing, East Lansing. And she was there just looking at jobs and things, and they had a bulletin board up there with the cards, part-time job cards. And she saw one said, part-time sportswriter. And she said, look, you could do this. And I said, I don't want to do that. Sportswriters, what a bunch of nerds. I don't want to do that. And she said, just do it for me. So, you know, your wife says that. He's like, oh, okay. You don't want to sleep in the garage. So, Saturday morning, 10:30, said, this is perfect. I'm going to make this call. Nobody's going to be there. I'm off the hook. Guy answers the phone. Real gruff. He says, sports. I said, hello, I'm calling about this sports writer's job's probably been filled, but he said, when can you be here? I had the job immediately or sooner, right? So I'm thinking, 2 weeks would be a good time. And he said, can you be here in 20 minutes? So I drove to the Lansing State Journal. I mean, no idea where it was. I'd only been in school for 6 years, but I had no idea where this building was. And I actually went to the wrong place and had to kind of jog down the street. And this Ed was waiting for me at the side door where you drop off the old bowling scores. And he said, come on up to my office. So he walked up there and sat down and handed me a roster sheet that all the high school coaches filled out before the season, what their team was going to be, their captains, their lettermen, all this stuff. He says, write 3 paragraphs about their season. So typewriters, right? This is like prehistoric. Put the paper in the carriage, turn it. I'm typing about this fast, and Ed leans over and he says, we're a daily, not a monthly. About 5 minutes later, the phone rings, and it's my wife, and she thinks I've been abducted somewhere, right? And she says, sports. She kind of throws me the phone. And I said, hello? Oh, yeah. No, it's okay. I'm fine. Yeah. No, I'll see you in about 45 minutes. I go to hang up the phone. He says, if you're going to work here, don't ever have your wife call again. Work here? I didn't want to be there, right? So he says, let me see what you did. Looked at, no, that's terrible. That is terrible. Where'd you learn to do that? Says, you lead with the name of this. It gives me a little journalism instruction, right? Do it again. So I did another one. That's a little bit better, but do it again. Gives me another sheet, another sheet, another sheet. I must have done like 5 or 6 of these things, right? I'm thinking, like, am I ever going to get out of here? So be here Thursday night at 6:30. Okay, they're going to have a meeting of all their stringers, all the people they're bringing in who are just going to learn the business, right? And I'm between coaching jobs. I taught and coached for 3 years, and then they laid off everybody up to 7 years because they had a millage crisis. People said, we're not paying any more taxes. You figure out a way to do it. What they did was lay off all the teachers. So I show up on that Thursday night, and I see the high school football tab, the preseason magazine, laying out on the table. And I said, okay, well, while I'm waiting, I'm going to just flip through that and see what the real writers wrote about. So I'm going through, and I'm to the Capital Circuit, Ingham County League, and I start seeing the teams there. I look at it, and I said, God, that looks wait a minute. That's what I wrote. And what this guy had done, Ed, was hire 4 people and use all of their tryouts in the preseason tab. So he didn't have to pay anybody to write it. Pretty smart. So we started to do this, and I was just killing time because I was obviously going to be, the next Nick Saban. And doing this, and finally I've got a chance to go, and I'm going to coach in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Perfect. And I go in to tell Ed this, and he says, oh, that's really too bad. So what do you mean it's too bad? He said, well, we wanted you've been covering the Lions for us. We wanted you to cover the Super Bowl and do all this stuff and travel around the country, and we had all this thing set up. I was just going to tell you. So, well, I could kind of put that off for a little while. I could just wait and do this. So I did that, and then 2 years later, I had another opportunity, and I called him, and I said, Ed, I got to talk to you. This is important. He said, well, come over to the house. So go downstairs, and I said, look, I appreciate everything you've done. It made me assistant sports editor. You give me chances I've never had, but I wasn't cut out to do this. And he said, that's really too bad. I said, what do you mean it's too bad? He said, because our lead columnist is leaving on a Kiplinger fellowship, and we want to give you the daily column and cover Michigan State and travel around the world. So, I could do that and just wait a little while on the other thing, and they didn't get rid of me for 25 years. Finally, 2003, one more trip to West Lafayette would have killed me. So I decided that I had an opportunity to do radio, morning radio. And had a meeting with some guys from Akron, Ohio, Rubber City Radio. And they said, we're really looking for kind of a 2-person team. We want to kick off a sports station. We want you to anchor it. And I hadn't done any radio since I was in school to do radio. But I said, okay, well, this could be kind of fun. Just do it as a sideline. 7 o'clock. Well, to me, 7 o'clock only meant 7 o'clock at night. It did not mean 7 o'clock in the morning. But I had a partner who was a big-time Michigan fan. I mean, a diehard. His name was Blue Belly Tom. And so it gave us this slot, right, doing this morning thing. And the way it happened, I'm covering the NCAA tournament. Michigan State's playing North Carolina State in 2002. And Spartans are ahead at the half. It's a Friday afternoon. All of a sudden, I see all these messages from Tom. And he knows, never call me during a game, okay? You want to call and tell me some stupid joke, just wait till the game's over. So I'm getting call after call after call. So at halftime, I go out in the lobby and I said, what are you doing? Do you know there's a game? He says, we got a radio show. I said, we do? When do we start? Monday. Monday? It's Friday. I'm going to be here through Sunday night. I probably won't get back. You're going to be on all by yourself. You know what you're doing? He said, just be there Monday morning if you can. I said, I can't. So your first show, you're by yourself. Sure enough, Michigan State gets 2 guys injured. They lose to North Carolina State. I change my flight, come back. We show up on Monday morning and didn't even know how to turn the mics on. Did the show. I think there were 2 people who have admitted they listened to the first show. And one of them was in a coma. So we're done, and I'm driving home. And I said, I didn't even tell my bosses at the paper that I'm doing this. I mean, this is probably bad form, right? If they happen to listen to this and hear me. So I turned around, I went back to the Journal, got everybody together in a conference room, and I said, look, I just wanted you to know that I had an opportunity. It's going to be great for the paper. It's a radio gig. He's not going to interfere with anything I do. And the managing editor's shaking his head. I said, this isn't good. And he says, I know you. I know the hours you keep. I know you're never in bed before 2 a.m. This is not going to work. It's going to screw up what you're doing for us. I don't like it. And I said, look, this is the trend, right? Writers doing radio. You're just starting to see it, but we're going to be on the cutting edge. I'm going to be publicizing the State Journal every day for 3 hours. Trust me, this will be fantastic. And sourcing, it won't affect any of my travel. I can do it on the road. I'm really selling at this point. And he says, you can't do both. I guarantee you cannot do both. I said, look, give me 1 year, okay? Because I had a 1-year contract. Give me 1 year. And if I can't do this to your satisfaction and beyond, then I will resign from that. I will just go back to doing the one job, and I will admit I was wrong, which he said I had never done before. So 10 months later, I just gotten back from a trip to Minnesota, and I walked into his office, and I said, Mickey, remember when I told you that within a year, if I couldn't do both jobs, that I would? He said, yep. Feeling really good about himself. And I said, well, you were right. So I'm leaving the paper. And he was beyond stupefied that I would do that for less money, but opportunity, right? I saw where I thought daily newspapers were going, at least in Michigan, and I needed a change after 25 years. Went from there. Now we are coming up on 20 years doing radio. Now I'm in the afternoon drive doing sports, and then I do a weekly television show. And I said, I'm still going to write. So in the meantime, I've written 8 books, and I've had a chance to do things that I never imagined just because I kept an open mind.
Wow. All right. I've read 8 books in that time. So just to pick up on how things change, right? Versatility is a big deal. So doing the swap shop and doing school closings, I was doing sports as well. That was my passion, getting up in the morning, doing sports talk radio in Concord, New Hampshire for like 30 more people in this room than listened. And I decided it was time for a career change around 2005. Well, my boss decided it was time for a career change. There was a new owner of the radio station, and I found out after being part of a family-owned radio station, knowing everybody, the corporate world got me, we're eliminating your position. And it's a good thing, as it turned out, because I kind of lost the ambition, the drive. You know, when I first got into the business, I'll be here for a year or two, I'll go to a big market, I'm going to become the voice of the Yankees or the White Sox or some baseball team. Well, none of that worked out. So at least I wasn't told leave today. You know, he told me on Veterans Day, so in radio you work Veterans Day, and then I had until February 1 to find a new job. So first thing I learned is let everybody know you're looking for work. You don't have to tell them necessarily that you're fired, but you'd be amazed the people you know, the contacts, interviews that I happened to get. But one was there was a minor league baseball team that had moved to New Hampshire, and I happened to, the gentleman who was the general manager of the team went to Syracuse the same time I did. He was one of my TAs. You know, he didn't know me from Joe, but I called him and said, oh, don't you remember me? You were my TA. And I played the Syracuse card. I rolled the dice, and he goes, huh, okay, yeah, I do remember you. But I got a job there. So first I'm broadcasting games, which is my dream come true. I'm a voice of the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, Toronto Blue Jays, AA affiliate. But then when I went to go work there, first day on the job, it's like, okay, listen, you're a group sales person. Your job is to get on the phone and call 100 people a day and sell tickets. And it was January, and my job was to get people in the stands. And I learned quickly, nobody cares that you've won the NSMA. It was NSSA at the time. I had won the Sportscaster of the Year award, and I figured everybody who works here must know who I am. Instead, the second day on the job, they go, listen, we need you to be Fungo. Anybody ever been a mascot before? So Fungo is the mascot. So there was a ski area, and back in 2006 this was, New Hampshire had a few sports teams. We had an indoor football team. We had an AHL hockey team. And the AHL hockey team was like really popular. And the Manchester Monarchs. And they had a professional mascot. This guy like had his own sneakers. He had his own snowboard. So I go to this ski mountain with a bunch of school kids as Fungo, never having put on the costume before. So you put on the mascot costume. You're basically like a horse in a blinders. Like, you can't see left, you can't see right. You're trying to just walk, right? So here I am. A mascot is kind of leading me along. And here's the deal with kids and mascots. All right, little kids are frightened of you. So they're screaming in fear when you see them. Then the middle school kids are hitting you. I think as revenge for when they were younger, right? And then they were scared of you, so now they know you're not real. So being abused by these kids, and then the adults come over. And they're trying to say, hey, it's okay. You can talk to me. But who is it hot in there? You know, they're trying to get you to break character. Never break character. Never speak to anybody. But the end of that story is, here I am thinking I'm the king of the world and I'm a sportscaster for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. And I'm at this mountain, and kids, the Manchester Monarch guy is going down a snowboard on the hill, and the kids are cheering. And they look over and they say, Fungo, get up there. I'm like hitting, I can't even see them. I'm knocking kids over. I kind of do one of these. I get booed by school kids on my first day as a mascot. So that was a real eye opener as far as minor league baseball, and I ended up working there all the way through 2010. So I learned everything from how to write press releases, how to give out credentials, and when a major league prospect shows up, deal with the media. John Smoltz came in pitching for the Red Sox team, and I couldn't even broadcast that game. It was all about making sure the media. So I got a good chance to find out, there's other sides to the business than just, look at me, I'm saying there's a 1-1 pitch down and away, I'm going to go to the big leagues. And I never did. I was getting worse at my job, broadcasting, because there were so many other duties that came along with it, but it's those other skills that made me more marketable. And when I got tired of traveling to Akron and Erie and Binghamton and Reading, see, this is double-A baseball. You see the same cities year after year after year. The first wife was still around. We had kids. Like, being gone all summer, I see a lot of young people. That's a dream come true for young people. And then when you get into your 30s and you're still doing it, and it's like, okay, I'm not getting better. The major leagues aren't calling, and I'm gone all summer. So that's when I kind of found an opportunity to get into the college space at the University of New Hampshire. I was working as the football color commentator, because at that old radio station, the sports director happened to be the voice of the Wildcats. Legendary guy. He's won this award 25 times. All right, he's the best sportscaster New Hampshire's ever had, and he happened to take a liking to me, realized I wanted to do it, so he would bring me across every Saturday to UNH. And so that was my introduction to the school. But the reason I got the job, again, this is years and years later, I won't bore you any more than I already am. I think the reason I got the job, going back to opportunity, is there was a hockey game at St. Lawrence University. Now, St. Lawrence is way up in New York. Do you think New Hampshire is rural? It is. But St. Lawrence made New Hampshire look like a metropolis, and nobody else the regular radio guy did not want to go on a Sunday night to broadcast this game. I said, I'll do it. I didn't know hockey I still don't know much about it if you listen to my broadcast, but hockey's a hard sport. I hadn't seen much. I'm a football guy, basketball guy, but I said yes. And they didn't want me to drive alone because it was like 7 hours each way. And they said, yeah, you'll fall asleep. So the guy who sat with me was the sports information director for the hockey team at UNH. So we had about 14, 15 hours together back and forth in that car ride. And when you spend a lot of time with somebody, like Jack and I are getting to, you talk about ambitions, goals, dreams, and we talked a lot about where the future of sports information, which is now communications, videos coming along, broadcasts is tying in. And so we said, hey, if we ever had a chance to work together, it'd be pretty neat. And it was 2 years later when that opportunity came. But I always say it was that car ride in 2008 that he realized maybe I worked in a baseball team, hadn't had any college experience, but he knew where I was coming from, and I got the opportunity, and I've been there. Gosh, 2010 I started, and I'm still there in a variety of roles.
How many of you came here this morning thinking you were going to hear from a wannabe Big Ten football coach and Fungo? One guy gets good. So how many of you are aspiring writers? How many of you are going to be working for The Athletic? Couple. Okay. Hang in there. How many of you are broadcasters? We'll be driving around. We're going to be hearing you. Or we're going to... There we go. There come the hands. Okay. How many of you are going to be on TV? Put your hand up. I know.
This is no time to be shy.
How many of you are going to be on ESPN? The ESPN staff just got bigger. You know, it's funny that when I ask questions like that, I find most people think, you know, I might not be on ESPN. I might be on Fox. And that's okay. That's exactly the way you should react, because you have to dream. If you can't dream it, it's not going to happen. But as often as not, what you get is not what you imagine, okay? Talk about life in a box of chocolates. The media is the ultimate box of chocolates. And when you open it, you never know when you're going to get a caramel or you're going to get a coconut. And when you start out doing this, there is no job too small unless it means that you have to get your money from the blood bank, okay? If you have to start for minimum wage and you have to do that, don't worry about that paycheck. Worry about the paycheck you're going to get down the road. Or better yet, don't worry about the paycheck, period. Because people who worry about their paycheck usually get small ones. And people who pursue their craft and try to get better and love what they do. I've had a lot of young people, very, very talented people way, way, way more qualified to do this than I was back in the late 70s. Say, you know, how do I get started? I want to do this. They know their career is mapped out. And it doesn't start with working minimum wage for 18 months. I say, first of all, are you prepared to take the vow of poverty? And if you can't do that, you should probably go sell insurance. Then, are you prepared to move? Very, very, very few people wind up in one state, let alone one city. Most people have to move around. Maybe not like football coaches these days, but they're on the move, okay? So, are you flexible? Are you adventurous? What is your goal long term? The big picture. And half the time, the big picture is going to be something completely different from what you envisioned. I told you about that first radio job when we were on in the mornings. It was a sports page with Jack and Tom. And we did that for 4 years. When they signed us, they gave us a basic contract and then a bunch of bonuses and incentives. Excuse me. And they thought they were real smart because they wrote in these incentives about being top 5 in the market and things they'd never have to pay, right? There were 22 stations in our market. And we were just starting off. They had no idea there was even a station there. Just frequency. So in 2006, they called us all in and they said, we have good news and bad news. Said, the good news is that you all met your bonuses, your clauses. That you're up to number 3 in the market. Congratulations, that's fantastic. You'll all be getting your bonus checks. And the bad news is you're done tomorrow. That's the last check you'll get. I said, like, wait a minute. We just moved up from 22nd to 3rd and we're done tomorrow. Going to automated oldies. Automated oldies, right? So they went from a game, boom, sign off, and there was a Beatles song. So at that point, you're wondering, now what do we do? Fortunately, I was able to write a book at that point, and I'd had a publisher that wanted me to do a Tigers book. And the Tigers in 2005 were beyond pathetic, okay? one of the worst teams in baseball. 2003, before that, they lost 119 games. So I'd put this guy off, and I don't want to do that. That's, no. In fact, I gave him a bunch of names of people I thought would be better. Now, suddenly, this is looking pretty good, right? I'm done tomorrow. So I called the guy back, and I said, you remember that idea on the Tigers book? And he said, yeah, you ready? Tigers had just signed Pudge Rodriguez and Maglio Ordonez, and they had Justin Verlander coming up, and they had some young pieces. This is just before they got Miguel Cabrera, but 2006, they came out of nowhere and made the World Series. Pretty good year to do a Tigers book. So I spent the entire year down at Comerica Park writing a baseball book because it's what was there. It was what was out in front of me. Something I never imagined I would be doing, writing a baseball book. And sure enough, wasn't much after that, a guy called me and he said, look, would you come in the mornings and just do sports commentary for me? And when I'm gone, I've got a rug factory in Asia, and I go and I play a lot of golf in Great Britain. Would you host the show while I'm doing that? I said, look, I'm not going to come in the morning and read scores for you. I don't want to do that. He said, no, I don't mean that. I mean a commentary. You don't even have to come in. You just record it the night before. People know you. They like your opinions. So just record a commentary, and then when I'm gone, you're the fill-in guy for 6 weeks a year. I said, I can't sign a contract. I can't commit to anything, but for the time being, I'll give it a try. Again, because I didn't have anything else, right? Looks pretty good when you don't have anything else. So I start doing that, and about 4 weeks in, a guy says, hey, by the way, they're going to an afternoon show. They're going to a show, afternoon drive here, local, and, if you apply, you might get it. Okay, that sounds pretty good. I'd love to have my own show again. It wasn't going to be a sports show. It was going to be mostly politics, some business, some entertainment, a little bit of sports. Maybe 15 minutes a show I could squeeze in because the guy who owned the station didn't like sports. So I walked in and I made this pitch about how I could do this, and I had experience and I knew the community, and I really sold myself. I'd been a political science minor, and I knew some people down at the state capitol. I didn't tell them how I knew them. I knew them because when I had been a college student, my job was to be a janitor at the Democratic state offices, emptying wastebaskets and vacuuming the floor. Greatest job I ever had. I got paid 3 times more than I deserved, and I could do a 4-hour job in about 45 minutes. So I sold this guy on giving me a shot to do this. And I walked out and I turned around and said, I didn't even talk about what the compensation is. I don't even know the package. So I walked back in and I said, hey, I'm sorry, there's one thing we didn't even talk about money or, he said, your salary is 0. I'm thinking, that's not very good. But I'm going to give you 5 minutes an hour to sell. They're yours. You sell them, you'll be doing better than anybody in the market. You don't, you'll be working for free. Once again, the versatility of this, right? Suddenly now, just like Mike's got to be fungo, I've got to go out and be a salesperson. So I'm racking my brain thinking, who's going to want to buy this? Who can I go to? So I started off with my car dealer. I just bought a car there. And went back and pitched the guy on the idea, and he said, yeah, I'm in. 23 years later, I've gotten 7 cars there, and he's still my lead sponsor. I went to the High School Athletic Association, and I said, look, I'm doing something. I'd like to be able to dedicate part of the show to the preps. I want to mention that a good friend just walked in, and he's a guy who should really be up here because he's been covering high schools for 50 years in the state of Michigan, Mick McCabe over there. So maybe you'll get a chance to hear from him a little bit later. But I said, I'd like to do this. And they said, okay, all right, we're in. And I knew a guy who ran a bus company. They were in charge of most of the school busing in the state of Michigan, but also charters, tours, going to the ballpark, going to the casino, going to Chicago, going to Toronto. So I went in and I told him what I was going to do. He said, yeah, I'll do that. Just starts slowly and grows, okay? It's organic. It's not some grand plan. It's nothing that's guaranteed. But if you keep doing it and you keep focusing, keep your eyes on the prize, it's amazing what can happen.
Yeah, I think if you've learned nothing else, you've learned that you have to make your opportunities and say yes, and you find out you have skills you probably didn't know you had before. I wasn't skilled at being fungo. I lasted just that one day. But I've segued into more of a mentorship role to younger people, like aspiring broadcasters like here. So when we ask the question about who's going to work for ESPN, well, I work for ESPN. You know why? Because schools, even a college like the University of New Hampshire, which is in every way, shape, or form a mid-major. We have football, but we're Division I FCS, not FBS. We have basketball, but we've never even played in our conference championship game, let alone getting to March Madness. Our hockey program used to be really, really successful, still really popular, but even, like, how many people know who won the hockey national championship last year? It's a niche sport. Who won it last year? It was UMass. Yeah, also in our league, but that's okay. You took a shot. I appreciate it. So the point is we produce all of our broadcasts now. So our basketball games are all on ESPN 3 or plus. As you put on ESPN 3, there's about 60 basketball games a night. And guess what? There's more opportunity for talent than there ever was before. Our football games are on the NBC Sports affiliate in Boston. The same station that does the Celtics games does University of New Hampshire football. But it's us. It's students running camera. The talent is professional, but we have young people doing so many of these jobs now. And the guy who does our football play-by-play and our men's and women's basketball play-by-play, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, he was doing minor league baseball in Columbus, Georgia, I think. And we were just starting the ESPN. We just invested money in our facilities, in the television production, and we're like, we're really doing this. Like, University of New Hampshire is going to be producing these games. We hadn't done it yet, and this guy was trying to get a job. He was from Syracuse, so I had a natural affinity for him. I listened to his tape. He sounded good, but that was only part of it. He called me, and he said, listen, I have an opportunity to do, it was UMass Lowell, which is another Division I team in our league. I could do UMass Lowell, women's basketball, online radio, every game. I really want to take this job. What do you have? I said, I've got nothing. But in 3 months, by January, we're going to be up and running. And I'm telling you now, we're going to be TV. You're going to have the ESPN flag. You're going to be seen. We're going to have the video replay. You're going to have producers who know what they're doing, and you're going to look good. So if you take that job and you get the reps, that's great. I said, if you want to be a TV person, I saw a lot of hands go up for TV. I said, you're going to want to do this, because I'm not lying to you. I have no proof, but once you're on screen in New Hampshire doing play-by-play with good professionals around you, because people can make you look good or bad. And we have our University of New Hampshire Wildcat Productions. The cameras are good. The camera operators are good. The replay is really good. And you can watch a lot of games on ESPN and know who does a good job, who does a bad job. Long story short, he bought my pitch. He came, and now his jobs, he's still working for me, us, UNH, but he also works at the sports radio station in Boston, 98.5 The Hub. He works at DraftKings. He's a WNBA broadcaster, and it's because of his visibility. It started here. It's like, hey, you look good, you sound good, these are good games to watch, and it all was part of the package. So when you think about opportunities that are out there, never say no to reps. I wouldn't say that, and nothing disparaging about UMass Lowell. But if he was doing UMass Lowell women's basketball online only, no one's going to find that. It's too wide open a marketplace. You have to be seen, get better, and then market yourself in the area. And he's done a great job. And one of the tough things in the ego is somebody who's here as a sportscaster is finding people better than me and putting them in place because it's better for us. And I try to get people on there. I said, listen, first thing you do to lose credibility is not know the names and the other team. I get that you're broadcasting for UNH, and so you like our team to win. But if we're playing against UConn and you say, oh, there's number 6. Meanwhile, Verrier has it for UNH. You have to, and there's college kids who do this, you don't just show up and grab the roster and go. Like, you have to, their parents are watching, their fans are watching. You have to do the work to gain the credibility because it's so easy to lose, once you get out there. If you have the credibility and you have the passion and you're doing it, it's going to show through in your work.
What is the mascot for UNH?
The Wildcats.
You've never been in that suit.
I've never been Wildy Cat or Gnarls. We have 2 of them. But no, I've since learned. I try to talk to them. They don't talk back. Never break character. I hope you wrote that one down.
Talked about being somewhere and watching it grow. I've had a chance to do 4 different radio shows for 5 stations, which means I'm basically can't keep a job. But I remember when I started doing this, and it was back when I was writing. And my dad couldn't believe that I was actually going to games and sitting in the press box and getting paid for it, sort of. And he used to say, kid, you ever going to get a real job? And I tried to impress upon him that this was a real job. This wasn't just some hobby for 70 hours a week. But for a lot of people, as they start off, they've romanticized what it's going to be and what it might eventually be. But at the beginning, it's probably double the hours that anybody else would work for what you're going to get. And if you look at it as work, then you're in the wrong business. If you look at it as fun, opportunity, a chance that a lot of other people would kill to have. I grew up in a group of 4 guys, and we did everything together. And they're tremendously successful at what they do. We all made an agreement going way back of what we wanted to do. And I was going to be a Big Ten football coach. One of them was going to be on the Supreme Court. One of them was going to be in the cabinet in Washington. So everybody had their ideas of what they were going to do. And one of them now has argued cases before the Supreme Court. Another one has traveled around the world in global health initiatives. Another one has been a Wayne County prosecutor's assistant prosecutor. So they have done very, very well, made a lot of money, been successful in what they've done, but they would all have traded places with me, even though their paychecks were bigger, because I was living the dream. To them, they thought, man, God, you know who you just talked to? You know what he just did? Well, as you go on, that luster kind of wears off. You're not in awe. You're not intimidated. It's just part of the job. But it's a fun job. And it's a job that, for every person who gets it, 40 die wishing they had. So if you can follow that dream and you can stay versatile, first job I ever had when I left school, I talked about being a custodian. I also had a job of cleaning out radioactive waste from the cyclotron. I had to wear this lead suit, right? And then I would have to get screened. If you've seen the movie Silkwood, it's probably before your time. You know what I'm talking about. And I took that job because it was the highest paying job on campus for a student. Nobody wanted it. I said, okay, well, that means it's there for me. I'm there for a reason, right? Then when I graduated and I was looking for my first teaching job in Lapeer, I wound up as the Marlboro man. I didn't even smoke, right? But here I am, and I had the mustache, right? And I'd never been on a horse. And I'm supposed to represent, I'm working for Philip Morris Company here, North Carolina company. And I'm supposed to represent all the brands. They had Miller beer at that point, which was good for me. I was familiar with that. But that was a job that I did for a while, and everything builds, right? One thing builds on another. You meet someone. You never know when you're going to meet someone who can help you open a door. You never know when you're going to develop a skill that will come in handy down the road. So I've said this 4 or 5 times already. I'm going to say it 4 or 5 more. Keep an open mind, open ears, more often than not, closed mouth, and it's amazing how far you can get.
Funny how it all ties together. He cleaned radioactive waste, and that's basically what my career was, radioactive and kind of a waste. But I'll leave you with this, and now we'd like to leave time for questions. You know, in my younger days, my 20s, I lived in a condominium, and I shared a wall with a neighbor. Nice guy, very quiet. He was a plumber, single dad. His daughter was 3 years old. And one particular night, back then you didn't have like the computer on your phone. You only had one computer, and it happened to be on the wall that I shared with my neighbor Dave. And one night, his daughter was crying, you know, inconsolable. She's trying everything. She's just crying. I could hear right through the wall. I felt terrible. And then he said a line that has stayed with me forever. He says to her, "Do you think I chose this life?" To me, it's one of the funniest things I ever heard, saying to a 3-year-old. And I've used that a million times in my career. I'll have a bad day and say, "Do you think I chose this life?" But ultimately, to Jack's point, yeah, we did. We're doing what we do. We work long hours, but we chose it. We love it. And I think you're going to meet a lot of people like us who are very lucky, clearly talented, legendary. In some cases, neither, but still enjoying the ride as we go along. So we have a few minutes left. They probably should open up for any questions the group has. So fire away. We can hear you.
Any questions, or do we have to call on you?
I learned, that's a good question. Always say dump and change when you have nothing else to say. Like the puck goes thrown in, dump and change. You know, they're going, try to, you know, Jack Edwards is a UNH grad. He's the voice of the Boston Bruins, and he gives advice to one of my students, but I always say, what did he tell you? Because I try to take it. And try not to be, you know, you like to say the name of the person before the puck comes to Jones. Now it's over to, so if you say Jones has it, passes, if you can say the name, and sometimes you missed a few because hockey and radio, but getting the name right away is huge. And then the other thing is when there's a goal scored, usually they're dirty goals, right? Hockey is a beautiful game, but a lot of times the scoring is accidental. There's a scrum in front of the net. You just yell score long enough until you see the first person going to the handshake line. I believe it's going to be Murphy who had the goal on that, you know, because you hope not to screw up the goal calls as you go along. But you have to know the names going in. Basketball, you can get away with, I didn't memorize the roster, but there's 5 guys out here. I'm going to see who they are. Hockey, they're changing every 40 seconds or so, so you have to know the roster. It's very, very difficult. And I get, as you can tell from talking here, I get tripped up on words a lot, and hockey doesn't help that habit.
Hockey is very difficult to do. I think maybe as difficult as any sport in terms of while the game is going. Baseball's different because you have so much time to fill. You have to be a storyteller. But in terms of hockey, and people aren't seeing it, okay, if it's a radio broadcast, now you get into theater of the mind. But 2 things I think are pretty important, and if you talk to Mike Emmerich about this, you talk to Doc and he'll give you some tricks on broadcasting hockey. And one of them is to never forget that your audience out there may not know anything about what you're talking about. So you have to constantly be giving time and score, even to the point where you think, I just said this, give them the time and give them the score. And if you just give them the names, it's great to know all the names, and it's important, as Mike said, but people who don't know these names, they don't know Smith from Kaminsky. So you have to, more often than you would guess, say, you know, Wildcats puck in the corner, or the Wildcats breaking out of the zone, or something like that, so that people understand, you know, who has the puck. They may not know all the names that you're giving them, and you're just hitting them with 40 names. It doesn't do a lot for them. I've had the chance now to do some high school games. And that's something else about the levels. Everyone wants to do a Super Bowl, okay? Which is really one of the easiest assignments you can have, unless you're trying to find some angle that no one else has, because all of your availability is in gangbangs. Everyone is there together, okay? Very, very difficult to get something unique. But if you are doing high school sports, whether you're writing high school sports, whether you are broadcasting high school sports, that's where you can make, I think, the greatest impact, because people will remember that forever. They'll remember when you gave them a nickname. They'll have a clipping of something you wrote about them, and they'll carry it around. They'll have it preserved. They'll come back to you 20 years later and they'll say, do you remember when you wrote this about me? And you really don't, but you play along, and then maybe it jogs a memory, and you will, but you really make a difference on people's lives that you never will when you're one of 750 people covering a Super Bowl. So there's no job that's too small. Think about the impact. Yeah, it's a thrill to cover all those events. You know, writers and broadcasters have bucket lists too. Eventually you'll start checking them off. You will. But in terms of what's meaningful, what really makes a difference, sometimes the smaller the level, the more personal you can get, it really does make a difference.
If you take away nothing else, you have a gentleman here who lives outside Detroit who's been to the Super Bowl multiple times. Like, that seems impossible to think. Detroit and the Super Bowl in the same sentence. So anything is possible. More questions?
I was a slow learner, so it took me probably 5 years before that happened. I kept thinking that this was just a place where I was going to eventually get back to coaching and teaching. I'd majored in television and radio, but I'd gotten out of that, so I didn't think that was going to be the long-term goal. But eventually it is. I remember covering a U.S. Open golf tournament, and heading into the final round, the guy who was leading the tournament, his name was T.C. Chen, and he had about a 4-stroke lead heading into the last day. And I'm inside the ropes. I've got an armband. I'm just walking around, and he hit a really wild shot underneath a tree. So I walked over, and I just kind of crouched down, and he's trying to figure out how he's going to do this. And he swings, hits the ball, comes up, and he hits it again, strikes it again. He looks back at me and he says, I double hit. I said, yeah, you did. Not realizing that Sports Illustrated had taken that photograph of him looking back at me in awe and me nodding to him, yeah. So that was good, because my boss at the newspaper knew I was actually there. That probably helped. But sometimes it comes to you differently. You never really know when that opportunity is going to happen. Maybe the greatest day of my professional life happened by complete accident. And it wasn't even anything I did. There was a Michigan State Notre Dame football game in 1999. It was in South Bend. And Tom Izzo, Tom Izzo, the basketball coach at Michigan State, big time football fan, was going to the game. So he's got a parking spot close to Notre Dame Stadium, pulls up, and there's a limo next to him, darkened windows, can't tell who it is. He gets out of his car. Suddenly the limo door opens, and out pops a woman. Turns out her name is Lani Ali. She's Muhammad Ali's wife. And she says, hey, Coach. Turns around and said, I'm Lonnie. Would you like to meet the champ? Tom's like, the champ? The champ? There's only one champ. Door opens, and very slowly, in mid stages of Parkinson's disease, out comes Muhammad Ali. And Tom is absolutely stupefied. And his wife says, our son, Assad, is the biggest Michigan State fan. All he wants to do is wear Michigan State clothes wherever he goes. And so, it's really going to be great to tell him that, we met you. And he's like, tell me, you met me? I mean, yeah, I'm here. I can't even think of what to say. And Tom Izzo's not usually at a loss for words. And so he says, look, if you ever want to bring your son to a game, ever, just let me know. And he gave him a card and gave her a card and said, just call. We'll make everything. So he's all excited. He's telling everybody, hey, you know what? I just met Muhammad Ali. This is so great. Never thinking anything would come of it. Sure enough, into the basketball season, they're playing UConn in a non-conference game in the middle of January. And the week before, the phone rings, and it's Lonnie Ali. And she says, is there any way that we can get tickets to the game? Assad would love to be there, and Muhammad would bring him. Tom is like, do you want my seat on the bench? I mean, what would you like, So sure enough, this happens. He comes out. He's recognized at halftime. He does magic tricks for the team. Does all this kinds of stuff, right? So Michigan State has a great win on national television, and they go on to win the national championship. The last Big Ten team to win an NCAA basketball title in 2000. So now they've all got their, they're going to go their separate ways. And they've had the NBA draft, and Martine Cleaves and Morris Peterson are drafted, and they went and they got new cars, and they get a call again from Lonnie Ali. He said, Coach, it's Assad's 11th birthday, and the only thing he wants is for the Michigan State basketball team to come to his party. They live in Berrien Springs, okay, a couple hours almost to Chicago. And Izzo says, yeah, sure, when? What do we do? So give them everything. They rent a bus. The bus is going to go to Berrien Springs, breaks down on the way, but eventually gets there. And Izzo tells me, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go to Ali's compound for Assad Ali's birthday party. And he's as excited as Assad is with this whole thing, right? So I said, yeah, that is so cool. You think there's any way at all that I could kind of tag along, I was going to do something on the side for the sporting news. I thought this would be great. And he said, yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to have it. So why don't you just call? Gives me Lonnie Ali's phone number. I call. I said, is there any way at all I can just be a fly on the wall, but I'd like to be able to write about this? And he said, sure. Team's going to be there at 11. And why don't you come a little bit early? I'm thinking like, what, 7 o'clock in the morning would be good, So sure enough, they actually put in a basketball court for this birthday party outdoors. And they have about 500 of his closest friends, right, at this deal. So I'm there early, and I get a chance to talk to Ali. And before I hung up with her, she said, one thing. I said, anything you want. She said, autographs. I said, don't worry. The last thing I would do is ask Muhammad to sign an autograph. I mean, that's so unprofessional. She said, no, you don't understand. He's out of the spotlight. He really misses signing autographs. And he has Parkinson's, so it takes him about 30 seconds to sign Muhammad Ali anyway. But she said, could you please ask him to sign something? No problem. I have all the programs from every fight Muhammad Ali has ever been in, Thrill in Manila, Rumble in Jungle. I've got them all, right? So I take 5 programs with me, and then he's talking in real hushed voice because, and he's explaining some things that you would later see in documentaries and movies. And I've just died and gone to heaven, right? So now they have the team pull up, and as I said, the bus broke down, so they're late. Now all the kids are getting on Assad, right? Hey, Assad, I thought you said the basketball team was coming. Where are they? You know? And sure enough, finally, here comes the bus up this trail, and he goes running across the field. He says, I got Charlie Bell on my team, and he meets the bus, and they come out, they have a lunch, and then they play some basketball, and they all spend time with the kids, and they're getting ready to leave, right? It's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and Ali says, you want to see the gym? Gym? Yeah, it's his workout compound where he trained. And he had a museum with all of his awards and the belts. And players are like, wow, yeah, we got to see that. Who cares what time we get back? So sure enough, we all go over to the compound in there, and there's a ring. And Ali climbs up into the center of the ring. And certain things go before other things when you have Parkinson's. Some of your fine motor control, but some things you never lose them, okay? And he got up in the middle of the ring, and he motions Izzo to come up in the ring with him. And Tom's like, no. So now all the players are on him, right? Hey, coach, come on. You're supposed to be tough. Come on. What happened to players play tough players? Well, come on, get up in the ring. So he goes up there, and he's just kind of standing there, and they put these gigantic gloves on, right? About half the size of him. And Ali's like, throw a punch. Tom's like, no. Just throw a punch. So finally, Izzo goes to throw a punch, and Ali just moves and moves. And Tom wasn't really swinging hard, but he was trying to, not look like an idiot. And after about 5 punches, Ali just unleashed this fuselage of punches, right? All of them, just like in Hollywood, where you pull the punch and stops a half inch short of the guy's nose. And Izzo ducks under the ring rope, right? And I don't know if he wet himself or what, but the players never let him forget that. And then they left, and then I left 4 hours later. So, greatest day of your life sometimes comes when you least expect it.
I have no story like that. But I think the question was, when did I realize I may be able to do this? And it was something simple. I became the voice of Concord High School boys basketball. It was a couple years in and doing the swap shop in mornings, but like doing high school basketball on Tuesday and Friday nights was, I remember going home and being so fulfilled. I could live in this town in this miserable, cold New Hampshire because I'm play-by-play of a team, and it was really enjoyable. And my only connection to any of that was Matt Bonner was the star for Concord High then. He went to the University of Florida, and he almost won a national championship, but they lost to Michigan State. But anyway, Matt's a great kid. Now a man.
How many of you have ever done any sales in your life? Was it fun? Did you enjoy it? No. I don't know that many people who really do enjoy it. There are a few, but not many. Whatever it is that you think is the least likely thing for you to do in this business, you might wind up doing it. I know some people who have started off thinking that they were going to do exactly what you think you're going to do, and they've wound up being CEOs of companies. They have wound up doing things that they never could have imagined. But most of them owe it to their initial dream, okay? The idea of what they thought they wanted to do, and sometimes as you're pursuing that, there's a fork in the road, okay? Don't be afraid to take it, whatever it is. I see there are 3 young women in the audience here out of the close to 30 people we have. You have a tougher challenge in many ways. Some ways you might be able to get an opportunity because of being female. But in most cases, You're going to face skepticism. You're going to face some outright resistance. You might be subject to sexual harassment in this business. There are lots of things that are going to make your job trickier, okay? But there's nothing you can't achieve that the guy sitting next to you can achieve. And Mick and I are both very good friends with a young woman who is now the first play-by-play broadcaster for an NBA team. And she started out as a collegiate athlete, basketball player and a soccer player. And then she got her first job in a little tiny town in Michigan called Alpena. And drove around, and she wondered what she was doing, but she never lost the dream. And next thing you knew, she wound up in a bigger market, wound up in Lansing doing a lot of incredible things. Then she wound up on BTN. Then she winds up doing a game on Fox. Next thing you know, she's the play-by-play voice of the Milwaukee Bucks. So stay with it. Don't ever take no for an answer. If it's what you want to do, don't let anybody tell you you can't. Maybe you're not ready to do it right now, but forever's a long time.
So thank you all for allowing us to go overtime with you. I think we'll certainly be around the rest of the day, but I imagine there's something else that's supposed to be here in this room that will continue the good times. But thanks so much. I appreciate having a chance to talk to you guys.
Yeah.